everybody. It's Elizabeth from the Noonan Carnegie Library, and I'm going to share with you, for our adult story time, another two stories from Neil Gaiman's collection of short stories, Trigger Warning. Both of these stories, I believe, have a little connection to one another, in that they are scary, but in very different ways, but also about the things that can be lost when you don't pay close enough attention. So, we're going to start with And Weep Like Alexander by Neil Gaiman in his collection of short stories, Trigger Warning. The little man hurried into the fountain and ordered a very large whiskey. Because, he announced to the pub in general, I deserve it. He looked exhausted, sweaty, and rumpled, as if he had not slept in several days. He wore a tie, but it was so loose as to be almost undone. He had graying hair that might once have been ginger. I'm sure you do, said Brian. I do, said the man. He took a sip of the whiskey as if to find out whether or not he liked it. Then, satisfied, gulped down half the glass. He stood completely still for a moment like a statue. Listen, he said. Can you hear it? What? I said. A sort of background whispering white noise that actually becomes whatever song you wish to hear when you sort of half concentrate upon it. I listened. No, I said. Exactly, said the man, extraordinarily pleased with himself. Isn't it wonderful? Only yesterday everybody in the fountain was complaining about the wisp of music. Professor McIntosh here was grumbling about having Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody stuck in his head and how it was now following him across London. Today it's gone as if it had never been. None of you can even remember that it existed, and that is all due to me. I what? Said Professor McIntosh. Something about the Queen? And then, do I know you? We meet, said the little man, but people forget me, alas. It is because of my job. He took out his wallet, produced a card, and passed it to me. Obadiah Polkinghorne, it read, and beneath that in small letters, Uninventor. If you don't mind my asking, I said, what's an uninventor? It's somebody who uninvents things, he said. He raised his glass, which was quite empty. Ah, excuse me, Sally, I need another very large whiskey. The rest of the crowd there that evening seemed to have decided that the man was both mad and uninteresting. They had returned to their conversations. I, on the other hand, was caught. So I said, resigning myself to my conversational face, have you been an uninventor long? Since I was fairly young, he said, I started uninventing when I was 18. Have you never wondered why we do not have jetpacks? I had, actually. Saw a bit on Tomorrow's World about them when I was a lad, said Michael, the landlord. Man went up in one, then he came down. Raymond Burr seemed to think we'd all have them soon enough. Ah, but we don't, said Obadiah Polkinghorne, because I uninvented them about 20 years ago. I had to. They were driving everyone mad. I mean, they seemed so attractive and so cheap, but you just had to have a few thousand bored teenagers strapping them on, zooming all over the place, hovering outside bedroom windows and crashing into the flying cars. Hold on, said Sally. There aren't any flying cars. True, said the little man, but only because I uninvented them. You wouldn't believe the traffic jams they cause. I'd look up, and it was just the bottoms of bloody flying cars from horizon to horizon. Some days I couldn't see the skies at all. People throwing rubbish out of the car windows. They were easy to run, ran off gravitous low power, obviously, but I didn't realize that they needed to go until I heard a lady talking about them on Radio 4. Oh, why didn't we stick with non-flying cars? She had a point. Something needed to be done. I uninvented them. I made a list of inventions the world would be better off without, and one by one, I uninvented them all. By now, he had started to gather a small audience. I was pleased I had a good seat. It was a lot of work, too, he continued. You see, it's almost impossible not to invent the flying car as soon as you've invented the lumen bubble. So eventually, I had to uninvent them, too. And I missed the individual lumen bubble, a massless portable light source that floated half a meter above your head and went on whenever you wanted it to. Such a wonderful invention. Still, no use crying over unspilt milk. And you can't mend an omelet without unbreaking a few eggs. You also can't expect us to actually believe any of this, said someone. I think it was Jocelyn. Right, said Brian. I mean, next thing you'll be telling me that you uninvented the spaceship. But I did, said Obadiah Polkinghorne. He seemed extremely pleased with himself. Twice I had to. You see, the moment we whiz off into space and head out to the planets and beyond, we bump into things that spur so many other inventions. The Polaroid instant transporter, that was the worst. And the Mocket telepathic transporter, that was the worst as well. But as long as it's nothing worse than a rocket to the moon, I can keep everything under control. So how exactly do you go about uninventing things, I said. It's hard, he admitted. It's all about unpicking probability threads from the fabric of creation, which is a bit like unpicking a needle from a haystack. But they tend to be long and tangled like spaghetti. So it's rather like having to unpick a strand of spaghetti from a haystack. Sounds like thirsty work, said Michael, and I signaled him to pour me another half a pint of cider. Fiddly, said the little man. Yes, but I pride myself on doing good. Each day I wake, and even if I've unhappened something that might have been wonderful, I think, Obadiah Polkinghorne, the world is a happier place because of something you've uninvented. He looked into his remaining scotch, swirled the liquid around in his glass. The trouble is, he said, with the whisper music gone, that's it, I'm done. It's all been uninvented. There were no more horizons left to undiscover, no more mountains left to unclimb. Nuclear power, suggested Tweet Preston. Before my time, said Obadiah. I can't uninvent things that were invented before I was born. Otherwise, I might uninvent something that would have led to my birth, and then where would we be? Nobody had any suggestions. Knee-high and jetpacks and flying cars, that's weird, he told us. Not to mention Morrison's Martian emolument. For a moment he looked quite grim. Ooh, that stuff was nasty, and a cure for cancer. But frankly, given what it did to the oceans, I'd rather have the cancer. No, I have uninvented everything that was on my list. I shall go home, said Obadiah Polkinghorne bravely, and weep like Alexander, because there are no more worlds to unconquer. What is there left to uninvent? There was silence and phone. In the silence, Brian's iPhone rang. His ringtone was the Ruddles singing Cheese and Onions. Yeah, he said. Then I'll call you back. It is unfortunate that the pulling out of one phone can have such an effect on other people around. Sometimes I think it's because we remember when we could smoke in pubs and that we pull out our phones together as once we pulled out our cigarette packets. But probably it's because we're easily bored. Whatever the reason, the phones came out. Crown Baker took a photo of us all and then picked it. Jocelyn started to read her text messages. Tweet Peston tweeted that he was in the fountain and had met his first uninventor. Professor McIntosh checked the test match scores and told us what they were, and emailed his brother in Inverness to grumble about them. The phones were out, and the conversation was over. What's that? Asked Obadiah Polkinghorne. It's the iPhone 5, said Ray Arnold, holding his up. Crown's using the Nexus 10. That's the Android system. Phones, internet, camera, music, but it's the apps. I mean, do you know? There are over 1,000 fart sound effect apps on the iPhone alone. You want to hear the unofficial Simpsons fart app? No, said Obadiah. I most definitely do not. I do not. He put down his drink, unfinished, pulled his tie up, did up his coat. It's not going to be easy, he said, as if to himself, but for the good of all. And then he stopped, and he grinned. It's been marvelous talking to you all, he announced, to nobody in particular, as he left the fountain. That was And Weep Like Alexander by Neil Gaiman. And our next story is scary in a very different way, and about losing things by inattention in also a very different way. But I hope that you'll like it as well. This is also in Trigger Warning, the collection by Neil Gaiman, and this is titled Click-Clack the Rattlebag. Before you take me up to bed, will you tell me a story? Do you actually need me to take you up to bed? I asked the boy. He thought for a moment, then with intense seriousness, yes, actually I think I do. It's because I've finished my homework, and so it's my bedtime. And I am a bit scared, not very scared, just a bit. But it's a very big house, and lots of times the lights don't work and it's sort of dark. I reached over and tousled his hair. I can understand that, I said. It is a very big old house. He nodded. We were in the kitchen where it was light and warm. I put down my magazine on the table. What kind of story would you like me to tell you? Well, he said thoughtfully, I don't think it should be too scary, because then when I go up to bed, I will just be thinking about monsters the whole time. But if it isn't just a little bit scary, then I won't be interested. And you make up scary stories, don't you? I know she says that's what you do. She exaggerates. I write stories, yes. Nothing that's really been published yet, though, and I write lots of different kinds of stories. But you do write scary stories? Yes. The boy looked up at me from the shadows by the door where he was waiting. Do you know any stories about Click-Clack the Rattlebag? I don't think so. Those are the best sorts of stories. Do they tell them at your school? He shrugged sometimes. What's a Click-Clack the Rattlebag story? He was a precocious child and was unimpressed by his sister's boyfriend's ignorance. You could see it on his face. Everybody knows them. I don't, I said, trying not to smile. He looked at me as if he was trying to decide whether or not I was pulling his leg. He said, I think maybe you should take me up to my bedroom, and then you can tell me a story before I go to sleep. But probably it should be a not scary story, because I'll be up in my bedroom then, and it'll actually be quite dark up there too. I said, shall I leave a note for your sister telling her where we are? You can, but you'll hear when they get back. The front door is very slammy. We walked out of the warm and cozy kitchen and into the hallway of the big house, where it was chilly and drafty and dark. I flicked the light switch, but the hall remained dark. The bulb's gone, the boy said. That always happens. Our eyes adjusted to the shadows. The moon was almost full, and blue-white moonlight shone in through the high windows on the staircase down into the hall. We'll be all right, I said. Yes, said the boy soberly. I'm very glad you're here. He seemed less precocious now. His hand found mine, and he held on to my fingers comfortably, trustingly, as if he'd known me all his life. I felt responsible and adult. I did not know if the feeling I had for his sister, who was my girlfriend, was love, not yet, but I liked that the child treated me as one of the family. I felt like his big brother, and I stood taller, and if there was something unsettling about the empty house, I would not have admitted it for worlds. The stairs creaked beneath the threadbare stair carpet. Click-clacks, said the boy, are the best monsters ever. Are they from television? I don't think so. I don't think any people know where they came from. Mostly they come from the dark. Good places for a monster to come. Yes. We walked along the upper corridor in the shadows, moving from patch of moonlight to patch of moonlight. It really was a big house. I wish I had a flashlight. They come from the dark, said the boy, holding on to my hand. I think they're probably made of dark, and they come in when you don't pay attention. That's when they come in, and then they take you back to their, not nests. What's a word that's like nests, but not? House? No, it's not a house. Lair? He was silent. Then, I think that's the word, yes, lair. He squeezed my hand. He stopped talking. Right, so they take the people who don't pay attention back to their lair. And what do they do then, your monsters? Do they suck all the blood out of you like vampires? He snorted. Vampires don't suck all the blood out of you. They only drink a little bit, just to keep them going and, flying around. Click-clacks are much scarier than vampires. I'm not scared of vampires, I told him. Me neither. I'm not scared of vampires either. Do you want to know what click-clacks do? They drink you, said the boy. Like a Coke? Coke is very bad for you, said the boy. If you put a tooth in a Coke, in the morning it will be dissolved into nothing. That's how bad Coke is for you, and why you must always clean your teeth every night. I'd heard the Coke story as a boy and had been told as an adult that it wasn't true, but was certain that a lie that promoted dental hygiene was a good lie, and I let it pass. Click-clacks drink you, said the boy. First they bite you, then you go all ishy inside, and all your meat and all your brains and everything except your bones and your skin turns into a wet, milkshakey stuff. And then the click-clack sucks it out through the holes where your eyes used to be. That's disgusting, I told him. Did you make it up? No. We'd reached the last flight of stairs all the way into the big house. I can't believe you kids make up stuff like that. You didn't ask me about the rattlebag, he said. Right, okay, what's the rattlebag? Well, he said sagely, soberly, a small voice from the darkness beside me. Once you're just bones and skin, they hang you up on a hook and you rattle in the wind. So what did these click-clacks look like? Even as I asked him, I wished I could take the question back and leave it unasked. I thought huge, spidery creatures like the one in the shower this morning. I'm afraid of spiders. I was relieved when the boy said, "They look like what you aren't expecting, what you weren't paying attention to." We were climbing wooden steps now. I held onto the railing on my left, held his hand with my right as he walked beside me. It smelled like dust and old wood that high in the house. The boy's tread was certain, though, even though the moonlight was scarce. "Do you know what story you're going to tell me to put me to bed?" he asked. Like I said, it doesn't actually have to be scary. "Not really. Maybe you could tell me something about this evening. Tell me what you did." "That won't make much of a story for you. My girlfriend just moved into a new place on the edge of town. She inherited it from an aunt or something. It's very big and very old. I'm going to spend my first night with her tonight. So I've been waiting for an hour or so for her and her housemates to come back with the wine and an Indian takeaway." "See," said the boy. There was that precocious amusement again. But all kids can be insufferable sometimes when they think they know something you don't. It's probably good for them. You know all that, but you don't think. You just let your brain fill in the gaps. He pushed open the door to the attic room. It was perfectly dark now, but the opening door disturbed the air, and I heard things rattle gently, like dry bones and thin bags in the slight wind. Click-clack, click-clack, like that. I would have pulled away then if I could, but small, firm fingers pulled me forward, unrelentingly into the dark. That was Click-Clack the Rattlebag by Neil Gaiman, found in his collection Trigger Warnings. And we also enjoyed And Weep Like Alexander in the same collection. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing those stories from me, and I hope you'll join me again soon for more. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and check our website at noonandcarnegie.com for all of our programs and other offerings that we have. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll see you again soon.